Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before the guest is introduced, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. John Maynard Keynes.
Nice.
My dear friend Tony Capullo is here with me again.
Jay, what an honor to be here for part four. I want to jump into this because I did some research leading up to this, and I want your expert opinion because you are the culture man. So I want to get into a couple weeks ago. I sent you some texts, and this is a sports reference, but it doesn't have to be sports. So I'm going to read some things that I found, and then I'm going to ask you the question. There's a guy. He's the head coach of Minnesota football team. He makes $5 million a year with a $1 million bonus. Okay. In December of last year, he signed a $22 million contract. Pat Fitzgerald, who just got fired from Northwestern, had a 10-year contract at $5 million a year. He got fired, and he got fired because of a culture of hazing. Right? PJ Fleck is now being criticized by his players, a toxic culture. And then there's Ed Orgeron, who got fired from LSU a little over a year ago, and they gave him $17 million to go away. They paid him $17 million to get lost. Bad culture. Bad culture. These are all culture issues. So my initial question to you is, so let's go back. $5 million salary with $1 million bonus, 10-year contract at $5 million a year, $15 million, he gets fired. And then $17 million as a severance or buyout. So my question to you is, and they're all three cited instances of poor culture, of tense, toxic culture. It's all the same, right? It wasn't just poor culture, it was toxic. So my question is, do you think in these environments, and it doesn't have to be sports. I use these as examples because they're the ones I found. But it could be the pressure of being at the top of a CEO and having groups. Do you think sometimes that the pressure to, in this case, to win, the pressure to deliver becomes so intense that culture takes a back seat, that they just forget about culture and say, I have to win at any cost. I have to produce a profit at any cost. Whatever we have to do, we're going to do in spite of what it does to the culture. Is that possible?
Yes, it's inherent in business. Think about it. We start something because we have a vision to a solution of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We put a plan together. If we have great people on our team, the assets externally, like advisors, to help us put that plan together, or maybe we even just do it ourselves. Then we challenge ourselves by acting on that plan. So we have the vision, we put the plan in together, we act on the plan. That's all proactive behavior. Then we get the result. Now the result could be winning, the result could be getting clients, the result could be, and the profit that comes with that. Well, it's responsibility that comes with that. Responding, the ability to respond, meaning now we're being reactive. So all that proactivity created reactivity. Reactivity undermines proactivity, leads to stress, leads to anxiety, leads to people. We don't want to let people down. We're gonna let people down. We're going to have, so now the breakdowns of relationships are occurring. So short answer, yes, absolutely. Culture, the idea of what, let's put it in this term. What's culture? Well, how's the communication? Is there trust? Are we talking through the problems that we feel that may or may not be real because there's emotions in it? Like, because there's actually things going wrong constantly that we have to solve. Are we, what do we think of? Are we talking about this? Are we communicating around these problems? Well, it's hard to communicate when we have to react to other problems. So yes, the answer that's inherent in business is that as a business grows, as it succeeds, the fruit of its success undermined itself. The open communication that existed before the results closes down with the results, and that creates cancer, right? The toxic dialogue, I mean, we'll unpack that as deeply as you'd like today, but that could be a range of things. It could be that there's just a heightened level of awareness of how people feel that they want to be spoken to in environments. Maybe it may be elevating as our macro culture evolves. You know, the political narrative is evolving. The level of transparency is evolving. Example, you know, I've said things that I regret to people that I care about. If you know, that I've apologized for, what would it be like to have that on a recording and then for that to live forever? We live in a world where you could say something and never be able to take it back fully. Like, there's this level of transparency that's going on. I think that's challenging company cultures to really be what they say they are and think they are, to be a higher standard. Like, the expectation of how we can be people is raising. The level of responsibility is raising. It's becoming more and more vital for people to like almost be perfect. So
where is the balance? Because what I mean by that is, so they're making big money, whether it's a CEO or a coach, doesn't really matter, right? There's got to be some balance where, or self-awareness on the head of the top person to say, okay, I get it, I have all this pressure on me, but I can't produce to the exclusion of the culture, because the culture is kind of the personality of the company, right? So where is the balance? Where, for example, I thought of this is going to be stupid, but you know, I come from a hospital background. We had compliance officers, right?
yes.
What about a culture officer? What about someone whose sole job is to make people aware that we have to maintain some kind of culture? So where is that? Is there a balance?
I think we're gonna see more of that as a reaction of the breakdown that's happening. So in the breakdown of communication, order or an overemphasis of order is a reaction in a breakdown of communication. We're seeing now the chief culture officer, or these things that manifest themselves. And I would actually argue that if that is manifesting itself in an organization, it's a sign that the executive leadership, their heart might not be in their body. It could be, you know, the Tin Man.
Yeah.
That we may actually need to either grow or help go whomever's operating control of the organization. Because the more integrated the chief executive officer is with their C-suite, are they listening to them? Do they have a vision? Do they know what they're doing? I mean, because at every level of growth, there's, just like any person in their life, what you know you don't know, and what you don't know know. Mm-hmm. And so that interaction of what you know and then what you don't know, we need people. We need other leaders. Is there communication happening where we're solving problems together? If there's not, it's breaking down that culture, that feeling of that personality, as you alluded to, is going to start feeling like, ick. I don't want to be here anymore. You know, I got better things to do. Like, that's all symptoms of that breakdown in communication, which, remember, if we go to the beginning of the conversation, that's inherent in growth, is reaction, stagnation. We're constantly fighting that. So I believe that we're going to see more of what you just said, the heart officer or the culture person. However, that the value of that will we'll see. We'll see the value of that in the future. That's what I would argue, order reacting to a breakdown of communication. Like ultimately, the job of the CEO is to execute on that vision. It's resources, people, capital, or it's relationships, resources, and reasons. Like that's their role, And if they're not fulfilling that role in a way that includes other people to think and create problem solving in the organization, then the culture is going to feel like we don't want to be here. Some other person running around and trying to make the culture right inside the organization. That's like a babysitter's not going to raise your kid. It's going to be the parents.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have to tell you, I think that sometimes culture, I want to give you an example if I can. Because this was when I was living in Florida, which most of my life, there was a hospital I went to do a project. It was a children's hospital, right? So a lot of the kids are, they have cancer, things like that, unfortunately. So, but when I would go there once a year with my daughter and give out gifts to the kids. And when you walked in, you just sensed, it was a sense, it was a vibe that they had an incredible culture. Just the way the employees talked to you, the way they looked, the way they acted, their energy. So years go by, and I did this leadership program for like 6 weeks in Fort Lauderdale, and you're partnered with somebody, and I got partnered with the CEO of that hospital. And I said to her, I said, I have to tell you, what an incredible place. You've done a great job, with the culture of the place, the atmosphere. She said, thank you very much. And she said, but like, what, tell me why you say that. Like, what struck her? I said, well, I'll tell you, like certain examples, just the energy of the people. But I said, it's the only place, and the employees recognize this, right? Because, some of those kids are never going to leave there, right? But some will. On staff, they have a clown, a dog. And someone brings a dog to the children's room. The kids play with the dog and the clown, right? And now, like some people say, well, that's unfortunate. They saw it as necessary. And in talking to the employees recognize that this place is going to do whatever it has to do for the kids. And I thought, and they loved working there. I got to know some of the people because they were there year after year. But I think I'm going to add this leading up to the question. Can a culture be a vibe? When you walk in somebody's house and you go, it's really tense in here. like I won't be here. Yes. There's tension, right? There's tension. But I walked in that place. I wouldn't say it was relaxed because it wasn't necessarily relaxed because of what's in it. But it was a really positive vibe. Like you didn't see people just going through the motions. Everybody was very friendly. They took us from room to room. How responsive they were year after year, and the way they talked about working there and how proud they were to work there. And you're talking a big hospital. It's not a small place. So it was just amazing. And my question is that when the culture becomes a vibe to outside people, a good vibe, is that when hey, we've made it culture-wise?
That's definitely a sign. How to get there is the complex part, because when it's attempted to be engineered, we could have all the elements. We have the soup, but it just doesn't taste right. Right? The question becomes, was it the dog or was it the owner that, decided to bring them because of this reason, that reason, and that reason, and was already bought in to then they brought the dog as an extension of their buy-in because of this other reason that their relationship now influence it. Like the order matters. This was asked me last night on the podcast around culture about is it the ping pong tables? It's like the ping pong tables can be put in there by the ownership as a means of control, meaning it's appeasement, essentially. You should all be happy. You never have to leave. You have everything you want. It's Disneyland. Well, we're still not going to be happy if we don't get the human need to be bought into something, to feel heard, to be heard, to know what we're doing, to be in that right seat. Like there's all this overlap. So here, the ping pong table becomes a marker of culture when the people bring the ping pong table in of their own accord and they play ping pong with their friends that are their coworkers. They want to be at work. They don't want to stay at home. They want to be there. They want to come. They miss it. They miss that vibe that you're talking about. So it's what you acknowledge there is a marker of culture, how it's created organically versus architectured is the big question. And it's a process, and there's a level of nuance and subjectivity. It's a lot of art. As much like without the art, the science makes it culty. Without the art, the science makes it fake. It's like going into one of those dictator countries where the people aren't happy.
Right.
But they know they're not happy too, but they have to lie to themselves to wave so that their family can get paid.
I remember, and I know you've seen this. I remember when I would take people in Vegas on a tour of the Lightspeed second floor. There's a game room with a pool table.
Yeah.
A beer keg and all those other stuff, right? He had, and then there was the green, right? Everything was so well done, right? But the game room, rec room, whatever you call it, right? And when I would take people around, inevitably they would say, "What a cool place to work," right?
Yeah.
They don't even know. They don't know. I mean, they don't really know that. It's the vibe, right? Well, it must be a cool place to work. There's a bar when you walk in, right? With ice machine, right?
Yes.
And right. And then he's got a game room for people because that must mean he cares that people want to relax. I mean, and people would play pool on their lunch hour, right? But it spoke to the culture of what he was trying to do and what he does. And people would always say this to me, always. And I knew, so I took probably maybe 15 people on tours, they came to see.
Wow.
Yeah. And all of them were just blown away. I mean, blown away. And it's the culture, right? Which is, hey, you can have fun while you're here. Right. So I thought that just popped into my head. So I want to read this to you. I made some notes here. Brought my notes this morning, Jay.
I'm excited.
So I read this quote from a CEO who said that to have a successful company, many things have to work well. But culture is the pulse that influences every one of those things, which I thought was like unbelievable, right? I did. I thought that was incredible. So what I did was I started looking to see, and this won't surprise you, by the way. So a large company defined as 500 employees or more. And there's different surveys, but they all came out pretty close. The number one company in terms of culture, this did surprise me a little bit. HubSpot, Salesforce, Google, Microsoft, Zappos, which I actually would have voted that first because I do a little bit more about them than I did the others, and Apple. Now, when you get to the worst, it gets even interesting. What do you think would be the worst culture voted? This surprised me a little bit too.
Couldn't tell you.
Uber, Amazon, and Forever 21, which when my daughter was little, I spent a lot of money there. So, but Uber, as they defined the culture as aggressive and unrestrained.
What comes to mind when you hear that?
Well, shock actually, because in my mind, and maybe I'm just not thinking of it right, but in my mind, aggressive and unrestrained, right? Sexual harassment, EOC issues, right? There's a flip side to that. Let me just finish on this one. That's the culture. Conceptually, the idea is brilliant. It's the largest transportation company in the world. They don't own one vehicle, right? They have a deal with, I think, Tesla, where you can rent a Tesla from them. So you ask me what comes to mind. Well, if the personality, right, of the culture, of the company is the culture, to say it's aggressive and unrestrained, how do you justify that? How do you not know that's what it is? Like, how do you, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's almost like a person with no self-awareness, right? How do you, I mean, I get it, you have drivers all over the country, and I get all that, but I don't think they're talking about that. They're talking about the culture.
Well, self-awareness and business creation, they don't go hand in hand. They actually battle each other, because as we create, it's like, am I me or am I this business?
Right.
Who am I? Am I me? Like, why is it that you see all these businesses and it's the person's last name?
All the time.
All the time.
Trump Corporation.
Many companies, it's the surname of the family. It's a part of our identity. So it's very easy. It's natural for us to get wrapped up in the pursuits that we have to power, to gain control over our lives, to develop influence, and it's an interesting, this is something I think about often. And, economists like Adam Smith, the invisible hand. Actually, I had this, I was going to read this one in the beginning of this, coincidentally. And here's the quote. I was going to read this in the beginning of the show. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own self-interest. Adam Smith's theory was this, like the first economist, our self-interest ends up helping someone else. It's not that just want to give us, bread just because. I mean, they also need to eat. So I need to eat, the way I help you eat helps me eat. So simply, though, just this more succinct, it's easy for us to get wrapped up in our own narratives. This is the value of having counsel. This is the value of having a COO work in the operations and the CEO work on those relationships, those resources, those reasons at another paradigm to bring the organization up into that next level of operations. This is the value of that financial officer that's studying the numbers and studying the organization from a numerical standpoint, both the past of what we made, the present, where we're at, and the future of what we can make, and them getting together and having conversations around what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? And how are we actually doing it? So to answer your question, it's very natural because we have to ask what the Uber people thought. Maybe they thought that it wasn't aggressive, it was inspiring, and it wasn't unrestrained. It was free. Like maybe that was their perception of their behavior. And so they thought and talked about inspiration and freedom, and we're perceiving it as aggressive and unrestrained. And that's half the conversation. They have half the conversation. As Rousseau said, there's your truth, my truth, the facts, and the truth. We have to talk,
Right.
figure out what is going on here. So that's part of it, is it's easy for that to happen. And I don't know who's right yet. I got to get in there under the hood and listen. That's why we take time to find out what's going on in this culture. It's not just me going and talking about how culture should be. It's me going and observing the culture and taking time to think about what I see and developing that analysis and sharing that with the people that influence the culture. That's the leadership, and figuring out where we can improve. It's not just saying how it should be, because there's a contradiction even in that, how it should be. Like, my opinion is, based on my lived experience, that America is better than North Korea, right? I'm going to say the culture in America is better than North Korea. There's a bias in that. And, because I live here,
yeah,
never lived there. I don't
Right.
even, is it really true what's happening over there? So I'll stop in that piece.
No, this is great. So I made a note to go back to something you said. But I want to jump into this so I don't run out of time. So I found these 4 guidelines for someone beginning a company to be aware of in establishing your culture. And so I'm going to ask you about each one. There's 4 of them. So I'll read one off and then you tell me what you think, okay? Remember that your company is not for everyone.
And you'd like me to speak to that?
Yeah. There's 4 of these. That's one.
Hmm.
And Jay, keep in mind, these are the building blocks to allegedly.
Okay, I'll say that I might not be for everyone, and however, how I learn from my enemies will reveal my awareness.
Okay.
Meaning, our company might not be for everyone, but how we fire people, how we hire people, how we elevate people in the organization will reveal our values. So it's easy to just say, forget them. They're the evil people, but be careful. That's what my retort would be to that statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Create a common goal. Now that's very generic, but create a common goal. So when you go into a company, is that something you address?
Yeah, yes. One of my roles as a cultural advisor is to facilitate the process of getting clear on why the organization exists, what its value proposition is, and how it's delivering that 10, 20, 30 years out, not just as whatever its product or service is, but the people that make it up, the ownership, the leadership, and where are they all going? I found that as a leader that's in a position of power can get hone that craft and art of really getting to know what their people, not just what they want and what is the possibility of the organization, but what their people want and where they're going and how they can achieve their dreams through the organization. That creates a tremendous amount of buy-in. So absolutely, there's many goals. There's the goal of the organization, which has a subjective relationship with the goal of the ownership. And there's the goals of every single person, their life goals that work within the organization. If the organization has a really big, far-stretching goal, and the people believe that the person at the helm is someone that they can trust because they see that they're all in, and they feel like they're a part of it because they're actually being listened to, and they are actually in a seat where they can make a difference for their own life and their own goals, that's going to be a place people want to work at, and people want to build their life. Think of it like this. America creates upward mobility. Like you in one generation, you can go from being poor to being wealthy. That's part of that American dream, that narrative. A company that does not create upward mobility, career planning, the envisioning, the buy-in, is not going to have the buy-in from their people. It's part of the responsibility of the leadership to create that buy-in.
Is it harder or easier for you as an outside consultant, manager consultant, to influence a culture that's publicly traded, where it has a board of directors, or privately held where there's an owner?
I can't speak from experience as of yet. We've not worked with listed securities in that capacity.
Okay. So there's not like
It's been unlisted.
It's been privately held.
I would argue that the answer to that is proportional to my continued maturity, my continued education, our continued growth as a firm and how we relate to one another, our culture, our continued experiences. At this juncture, unlisted securities is what we've, and that, of course, some of the biggest companies in the country are unlisted, like Koch Enterprises, Cargill, right? In the hundreds of billions of, if they were listed. But so not all companies have to be listed on the public stock exchange.
I mean, you're in Florida, so Publix, right? Publix, you probably go to Publix, right? That's owned by its employees, right?
I'm not familiar. I have to look up the stock ticker. I'm not familiar if it's public or private, but I've heard fantastic acknowledgments from people about Publix culture.
I miss Publix, by the way.
You love Publix.
I love Publix. I used to shop with them, and people listening don't realize that you live in the neighborhood that I used to live in, and now I live in Texas, but which is a fluke that you ended up there. But I love Publix, and I know that the Publix on where the hell is it? It's on Flamingo and wherever. There was one. I don't know if there still is. So so Publix, I think, is owned by its employees. I'm pretty sure it is. It was.
Let's see. I don't know if there's a stock ticker for Publix here. Wow, 240,000 employees. Publix.
Wow, really?
Yes. So to answer your question, though, a little bit more, if a company is public, there are checks and balances inherent where, not that they work because perfectly or anything of that nature. Some of that would be the board. The board is there as a sounding board for the shareholders. So the CEO, whoever, they're essentially the manager of the organization. And their role is to provide the value to the shareholders, to provide value to continually the customers and the employees. And that's a balancing act. And as our, macro culture evolves, the order of who comes first is ever changing. Theoretically, people argue, is it the employees first? Is it the shareholders first? Is it the customers first? And that even the answers to those questions, Tony, the answers to those questions bake the foundation of the culture. Okay. Having someone like myself and firm like us help get clear on, hey, what do we actually believe here? The process of doing that helps a culture get clear on what it isn't, so it can be what it can be. And that sounds almost like, oh, that should be on a shirt. No, it's like it actually practically has utility, like, oh yeah, put that on a Hallmark card. No, like we have to get clear on what we aren't. And to do that, we have to get clear. What do we think? What do we believe? What do we want? In the process of asking these questions that might be, so close to us, we're not thinking of them. Then it becomes, oh, this is where we're going to go. Now, a public company has those checks and balances, the board, every day people can buy the stock, sell the stock. There's constant feedback. Are we doing the right thing? Are we not doing the right thing? The incentive, it's a different animal. The private organization, everything could look wonderful from the outside. But on the inside,
I want to go back. This isn't
Sure.
one, I might have two more, but I want to ask you because I know you only work with CEOs. So if it were a publicly traded company, would that mean that you'd only work with the board? Because that's the governing body.
yes. So in that circumstance, first of all, I can't speak specifically because that's yet to be a specific deliverable. Although
Right.
I've thought it through, in numerous ways. There could be a few ways to skin that cat, in the sense that, let's say that there's a board that's unsure of the tenure of their CEO. Someone like myself would have to, if they were going to be retained, to increase the likelihood of the CEO's success. So even if the board made that happen, imagine you hire somebody to come over your house. You ever see Matt Foley on Saturday Night Live, the motivational speaker?
No, I haven't watched
Oh
that.
my God. Anyone listening to this has to go to YouTube and type in Matt Foley, motivational speaker. The parents invite this guy over to the house. The kids come down. They're going to had a lesson talking to from this guy. They said, Matt, where are you? He's in the basement. He comes out of the basement and he just, it's Chris Farley or whatever. My name is Matt Foley. I've been drinking coffee for the last 2 hours in the basement. I'm here to tell you kids what you should be doing. So when you're getting introduced to work, if the board is hiring somebody to improve, quote unquote, the CEO, we're already in a defensive posture. That's, you want to really trigger somebody that, that's disrespectful, arguably. However, I'm open to having the opportunity to earn the trust of that CEO.
Okay. I've got two,
so that would
and
be
I
a
don't want
scenario.
I don't want to run out of time, but I want to get these next two. Okay, so remember that your company's not for everybody. Pay to common goal. Here's number 3 that I want your input on. Ready?
Yes.
Be explicit about your expectations before hiring. The fourth one, by the way, is really going to be a conversation piece. But the third one is be explicit about your expectations before hiring.
Yeah. So there's a few parts of that. Omission creates resentment.
Okay,
so
good.
In agreement with explicit on the expectations, I will say, though, on hiring, it's as important to learn, to listen, and to understand their wants, their needs, their goals, their desires, to figure out, it's not just, are they right for us, but it's, are we who we think we are? It goes both ways. It's like my rationalization after I fire someone that I think isn't a fit could actually be, oh, I wasn't clear enough what I wanted. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe I just never listened. And I thought I did. Maybe I actually never even got to know them. I just wanted a slave. Maybe I thought that maybe I was thinking for them the whole time and I never helped them think. See, companies start as, I'll use this as an analogy. I don't mean this in a theological sense. Like the founder's Jesus. I am the truth. I am the word. Meaning it's all on the founder's shoulders. It's their vision. They think for everyone. They think for their clients. They think for the family that's, unthinking, apparently, according to them. They don't get it. They think for everyone. And they have to, or else the company's going to fail. They're not going to have the confidence to market the business. They're not going to sell anybody. They have to think for everyone. Once they have people working for and with them, they have to be Socrates. Socrates says, the more that I know, the more I don't know. They have to stop thinking for everyone and they have to start helping people think. If I act the way I'm acting with you on this podcast, where you're interviewing me about a specific expertise with one of my employees who has a job of a genius zone that is around production, and I'm not asking them, what do they think about this? And how can we do it this way? And how are you doing? Because I'm so caught up in that word track of having to convince everybody at all times that I'm competent, then I'm going to end up letting my person down without realizing I let them down. So the more people we have to be responsible for, the more we have to develop the ability to speak and to listen. So that's my explication on that one, is like, I hear it a lot. It's always like the other person, but what about me?
Number 4. That was a good answer, by the way.
Thanks.
If you're going, I love this. If you're going, I'll even say it twice. If you're going to be intense, don't forget about ethical concerns. And I'm almost thinking this goes back to how we started this with the football thing. If you're going to be intense, don't forget about ethical concerns. And I think that's probably my favorite one. But I just think, what are your thoughts on it? Because it really does go back to how we started this conversation 45 minutes ago.
I think there you can build a culture around a common enemy, and you can also build a culture around a common inspiration.
What's the common enemy? Give me an example.
The language patterns is about like these people who are different than us. They don't get it. It's feeding on the lowest common denominator. You know, all of us have had enemies in our lives, people that have challenged us, experiences that have been difficult, that we may or may not have fully worked through at varying degrees. So when someone appeals to that part of our nature, that can put us into action real quickly. We can get things done. The long-term consequences of that culture are, well, if it was built on that negative energy, let's say, that resentment, well, then what's to say that won't eventually seep into the culture, into the, like so we're all together on this journey until there's no more enemies. We just start killing ourselves. I see that a lot in cultures where there's, for the short term, they have a lot of energy, they have a lot of dopamine, they have a lot of movement. There's a lot of the common enemy, the common cause. The cause is created with the enemy, but that can't be the main driver of the alignment, because it's a short-term dopamine rush. It's like, why did Hitler lose the war? Because methamphetamine and a common enemy wasn't enough, or an enemy wasn't enough. There needed to be more than that. There needed to be deeply rooted trust and meaningful relationships, and it's more of a long-term play. To build culture, it's a long-term play. To mobilize a cult, it can be a short-term play. And it's what type of life you want to live. Ultimately, you can get away with a lot in this world. What type of life do you want to live? So that's my short version on that one. Is I don't see a lot of people get away with things. I didn't.
I'm going to reread you these 4 things. Even though I keep reading them, but repetition is the mother of skill, right? And then I'm going to ask you if you can give your listeners a 5th one, because you're really good at this. Remember that your company is not for everyone. Create a common goal. Be explicit about your expectations before hiring. And if you're going to be intense, don't forget about ethical concerns.
Can you read them one more time?
Sure. So these are the guidelines to build a good culture, right? Remember that your company is not for everyone. Tell me when.
That's where I would just disagree.
Okay.
That's like,
all right. That's it.
America's not. No, this is the thing. America's not for everyone. That idea is horrifying to me. America is for everyone. The question is, are you going to stay out of the prison system, and did you deserve to go there? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, our whole society is based on the idea that we are equal under question mark, whatever theology people ascribe to. It is easy in businesses for us to not take responsibility because we have a power through accountability. So I don't, yes, the company is for everyone. The question is, can we, are we the leadership that is needed? Were we strong enough to burden other people's suffering? Like me, hey, we know we try to help somebody, and no matter what we do, they still let us down. They let the world down. Yeah, that's one of the paradoxes of life, right? The paradox of tolerance. The more tolerant you are to intolerance, intolerance kills you and itself. It's a tough paradox to solve. How do you solve it? Well, it means at some point you may have to fire someone that you love. So no, like what I'm saying is it makes sense that these word tracks appear in our culture, like we're not for everybody. And I would say that's a reaction psychologically to pain and suffer. I get it. But I do think that to maintain an open culture, we have to remind ourselves that everyone's welcome. The question is, can we, it's like the question you asked me about the public thing. I'm going to earn the business of our clients, and I'm going to earn it every day. I'm going to keep it or not based on my character. Now, yeah, they're a part of that too. But like, I don't live through them. I live through me. So I just right there, it's like, I don't know how I sit with that. I think of America, an imperfect culture, but one nonetheless that has certain a certain openness where people could come from all over the world and give it a shot.
Mhm.
And I think that has helped the whole planet evolve. And that was like a new idea at the time. That was a new cultural idea that people would be. Now, of course, that's imperfect. Tremendous atrocities. I don't want to discount that or throw that under the rug. And a lot of even what I said is like almost illusory, right? Because of how complex life is. But right there, it's like, we're not for everyone. Why? Some things are better left unsaid.
I want to,
It's like me saying, I'm never going to fall. I'm not lovable.
oh, you're very lovely.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I didn't let you even read all the things.
No, you did. No, that's okay. But I want to ask you, so you did. So, but actually you gave me actually, I asked you for a fifth one and you actually did. You told me you didn't agree with the first one. You gave a good explanation. The fifth one is a reverse of the first one. You just didn't agree with it, which is great. You gave great explanation. So what do you, so this was I knew this was gonna be a great discussion. It actually was really good, right? So thank you. What do you want the listeners to walk away with from today's conversation?
Each of us can make a big difference in whatever environment we're in. Our thoughts matter. Every day I get the opportunity to help someone hear themselves. I'll invite people on this show and I'll listen to them. And I can see what that means to people. As I did more and more of that and then realized how much of a failure I was at that in my actual real life, I started doing more of that in my real life. And I started having a more meaningful life where I built friendships with people like Tony, for example, in real life. And each of us can do that. We can speak up more when we might be afraid to say what we think. We can lean into conversations with family, friends, our enemies, our past partners and relationships. We can build a culture of our life by working on ourselves with the people in our life. And that is going to have an impact on our business dealings, believe it or not, because what is business? We're all just interacting and trading and bartering, like the butcher and the baker, and we're trying to figure it out as we go, who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so my takeaway is like, we have a lot more impact on people than we think. You, me, everyone listening to this, we have our culture. We're in this, it's like culture is such a layer cake, which is why I love the topic. You can talk about it forever. So that's my take. It's like, and if you own an organization, you talked about the personality of the organization. Yes, the personality of the owner impacts the culture dramatically. I hope one of my hopes is that my conscience and the conscience that's built through the relationship that I cultivate with the ownership of an organization increases their conscience, and they can be more as responsible as necessary. Like that's that's motivation. That's accountability for me to just continue to be a good person. So that increases the likelihood of people in power to be good. And everyone listening to this has a heck of a lot more impact on culture than they may have thought prior to this conversation.
I can't wait for part 5, my friend.
I'm ready. I promise you, I'm going to do a better job with the introduction of part 5. I got like a little spacey in the beginning of this episode.
No.
I was like, all right. But I was like, no. I'm supposed to intro, and then I'd rather just say it live because it's more authentic. But
thank you very much for.
I feel like I did a bad job with the introduction.
You did a great job. You always do.
Thanks.
And you and I have, before we get to part 5, we have something tonight. So look forward to that.
Tony, in closing, what do you think I can improve on in this process?
Nothing. I think you're just so down to earth and real world. It's wonderful. There's nothing scripted.
Well, thank you. And if you come to think of anything else, please be sure to tell me. And because, I value your.
No, I appreciate it, Jay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.